And welcome everybody to Yakking with the Yeti. I am the Yeti. How are you all doing today? Don't forget, like you saw in the commercials, Lower Catskills Paracon is coming up May 3rd and 4th. Please order your tickets. Things are selling out. We're also running out of vendor tables. So please get involved as soon as you can. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a grand load of fun. Okay, tonight, I'm talking with a very good friend of mine that we've never met in person, talked to several times, but never met in person. Tonight on Yakking with the Yeti, we have Mr. Barry Fitzgerald. Barry, are you out there?
Yes, Eric. How are you?
Oh, I'm surviving right now.
Good man. Good man.
I do have some questions. I was around. I've been around several different times when you've been interviewed, and I've always been fascinated by the technical side of what you do.
Uh-huh.
Of all of the people on television that I have seen, you, sir, are one of the few that actually bring something to the table with that, and I have to thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
You know, I know a lot of the shows get a bad rap, but there's a few of you guys out there that are bringing something to the table, and it's refreshing for us, those of us out there that are not hunters but more researchers. It means a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
that's great to know.
I was very curious. You've done some work with infrasound. Is that correct? Have you ever had any results with any of that?
Not necessarily. There were a few initial hits that we were getting with infrasound, but not a great deal. I know that some folks out there will say that infrasound causes all these strange feelings and all the rest, but it actually affects a small amount of the population. So that's something to take into consideration. And at different frequencies and decibels, of course, the infrasound will do all manner of different things. You know, you will have certain frequencies within the infrasound range which can affect our perception, can also interfere with our and put us into like a state of hypnosis where we, you know, if you're possibly traveling in a vehicle and you forget how you got from one place to another, that can possibly be caused by the vibrations coming from the engine, or even on the wheels, the tires on the road can cause that vibration, which can interfere with our thought process. So there's a lot of things that infrasound can do. There's also, of course, the other side of things where infrasound, as we see in Professor Govrard, was used or could be used potentially as a weapon, and was in its own right pretty lethal if applied at the particular frequency and decibel range. NASA have released several reports on infrasound and how the body reacts to those. The eyes will vibrate, I believe, at 18 hertz, and I know that young Tony, I can't remember his second name, sorry, from England, he released a report, and God rest his soul, he's gone now, but he had seen that infrasound within the lab was causing... Still there?
Yeah, I believe so.
Grand. I just seen a notice come up there.
Yeah.
Yes, he had seen that infrasound within the lab at certain frequencies can cause the eyeball to vibrate, making it look like a shadow figure standing at the side of the peripheral vision. And direct vision, of course, would make that disappear, and all manner of things, which of course a lot of people were quick to jump on with the paranormal investigating.
Well, do you personally think that that's the right way to go frequency-wise to detect the phenomena that we're seeing, or do you think the phenomena that we're trying to detect are at the other end, on the ultraviolet end?
This is the thing. You know, if you're looking at light frequencies, there are various things within the light frequencies which we have to take into consideration as well. But like everything, you take every piece of equipment that we have, even the advanced stuff, if they don't want to be found,
Yeah.
They won't be found. You got to understand that they're walking into our environment. We're not walking into theirs. So, you know, that's the big thing. And you know, if you got the grounding to understand this and understand that you know, potentially there are risks in establishing contact, because you know, we're quick to assume, oh, it's the spirits of the dead. Well, we actually don't know what they are. When the truth comes down to it, we just don't know. And that's the big thing. So I always err on the side of caution, and took baby steps. It's always paid off for me, and I think it's a good thing. Good science has always started with good observation, so that's something to bear in mind. And like science, we've got to be able to evolve. If we don't, well, then we're gonna fall and crumble like any of the big empires.
Well, and you also have to document. That's something else that a lot of people don't quite grasp a hold of, I don't think, well enough.
Well, that's the thing as well. And you also got to ask the question, you know, why are we in it? Why are we doing this? Is it really to show the world that paranormal phenomena exists? Because out there are going to be so many skeptics that will just say, humbug, and let it go. You know, we really got to reflect on the question of, why are we doing it? Are we doing it for them? Or are we doing it for us, ourselves? And that's a big thing. I know from my perspective, I'm doing this for myself. I want to see what's out there. I want to see and experience all these strange things and phenomena. Well, it's okay to document and say, okay, this is what happened and that. But when we get right back into it, right back to the core, why are we doing it? Is it for everyone else, or is it for ourselves?
Personally, I have very personal motivations myself. You know, I would like to talk to my mom. She passed away about 15 years ago. I'll be very honest. Everybody that knows me knows that. You know, I think that's true for so very, very many people that are involved. It's a personal.
I think I tend to agree with you, Eric. I think there are a lot of good people out there who are being driven from a personal perspective, which is good, which is a good thing. However, I also see a lot of people out there who are doing it for different gains, and that never works.
Yeah.
That will always fall back on them. I'm a great believer in karma, and I've seen karma exact its revenge. Multiple times.
Yeah, I would have to concur. I've seen that happen myself. And if you're, what's the old Chinese proverb? If you sit by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will float by, or something along those lines. With the work that you've done on bringing actual full spectrum photography into play, have you ever done any experiments that more involved the researcher and things that affect the actual researcher or the person that's there on the investigation? Have you ever done anything like that?
Yes, I have. I've been doing a lot of work with that to see how the environment actually has an influence on what we perceive and things like that, and how that researcher reacts to that. I have been doing work with that as well. We have to understand is with the full spectrum technology that was developed because of things such as, you know, what kids see and everything else, and from that, those cameras were developed from that to see a wider range of field of vision, if you like, to mimic kids. And as adults, we can no longer see the wider spectrum as what our kids see. So that's why the cameras were developed to cater for that. But in the understanding of the research, and I shouted this from the rooftops, but it seemed to fall on deaf ears, is that we cannot produce light into those frequencies. We just have to see into those frequencies. By producing ultraviolet light and infrared light, into those frequencies or into those spectrums that we want to see, it reacts badly with the manifestation of these entities. They will back off. So whenever we see all these cameras on eBay and things like that, that say full spectrum camcorder,
right,
with a bank of very diverse lights, that goes against what you want to do. You want to see into the light spectrum without stimulating the outer fringes of that frequency.
So you want to observe. You don't want to instigate anything.
Well, you can't instigate. That's the thing. You're shutting it down. So all the phenomena will stop. For instance, the negative range of energies that you will find will be deflected by ultraviolet. So they cannot materialize in ultraviolet. And that's the big thing. And the same with infrared. Infrared will have a degrading effect on the positives, if you like, at the other end of the scale. So what you need to do is find a middle ground, and that's where we were using the full spectrum low lux camera, in that we were able to see into the wider light spectrums without producing extraneous light for the camera to work. And that's whenever we started seeing these unusual formations start to form. I was examining some of the old claims from the Victorian seances. You know, the old style, the big manor house, and 10 people collected around a table under a single light. I heard a use of a castle over in Wales and travelled over and filmed this for myself. What we seen was that with the low lux camera during this seance which was developing, there was a figure actually appeared on the camera itself. We were able to record this, and this figure appeared standing over the shoulders of the people in seance, looking into the center of the table. And it was only there for 3 frames, but this was captured on the low lux camera, and that's something we would never have seen on a regular camera.
Well, I had a very specific reason that I asked, because a lot of the experiments that we've, and I say we, myself, my wife, our friend Dr. Jim Clausen, a lot of the experiments that we have done recently involved charging the atmosphere with ions. I also have, I know I've never heard you speak of or heard your opinions on, so I'll ask you now. Do you have any opinion about the EMF pumps? And with that being said, I actually have two versions of a device that I've created that's actually an MF pump. It's simply a spinning stick of magnets, but it creates a very interesting effect around investigators, because we've done it multiple times. And I was just curious.
Well, with magnetic fields, you know, you've also got, depending on the strength of the magnet, of course, you know, it can interfere with particular things going on with the body. And with EM pumps, an AC EM pump would be useless. We've got to understand that the human body itself produces a weak DC field, much the same as the Earth itself.
Correct.
And you know, this is always, I always find this a little strange that a lot of the equipment that's available for the non-established ghost hunter is looks for electromagnetic fields within a man-made SE range. Now, unless you're being haunted by a washing machine, the ghost of an old washing machine or TV, you know, it's no real use to you whatsoever.
Correct.
You know, we should be looking in the ranges of the DC disturbances, and of course then cater for that with the experiments with the EM pumps that were producing a weaker DC field and magnetic disturbances like you've just pointed out with the equipment they're using.
Well, I know with the magnets that I have, I call them the flower pots of doom. Let me give you an explanation of this high tech construction. It's a butter tub filled with dirt, with a mason jar inside, with a motor poked through the lid, and all of that is of course covered in a protective silver tape-like coating for protection.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is, and because currently the only EMF detector that I have is a millimeter. And I do know millimeters are more designed for static readings. They're not designed to be flung around the room, so to speak. Within 6 inches up to about 8 inches, it will peg out a millimeter on its highest setting. Within 15 feet, the range of this thing is about 15 feet. Within 15 feet, there's a discernible, it's a 1.5 to 2 milligauss type reading, but it's above any kind of average reading that's already there. Within 15 feet, but this is battery operated. This is not require. It doesn't have an outside current affecting the frequency that it's creating. It's how fast that little DC motor will spin. We've noticed that you are correct. It causes almost a euphoric state while it's running. It's almost like a feel good grenade, if that makes any sense. Because once it stops running, within 15 or 20 minutes, people have the exact opposite feelings that they've been discussing for the last half an hour while it was running.
That sounds very like it's producing the Schumann resonance. Now, that particular resonance, of course, mimics the Earth itself. And if we're during the stimulation within that frequency range, everything's grand. But once people are robbed of that frequency, we can go into states of depression and everything else. And it sounds something very, very similar.
Right. The other thing that myself and my wife and Dr. Jim got into experimenting with was the Gansfeld experiment. And the only thing we didn't do was meld those two, and that was our next deal before we had to move and relocate. And of course, life's what happens when you're busy making other plans. But
that's it. Yeah.
But that was going to be the next step in the evolution of what we've been trying to do, is to put those two together. But of course, the first thing before I do any of this, you'd mentioned the Schumann resonance. The great thing about this type of research is if you can help somebody become more attuned to what's going on around them, they become more aware all the time, which also makes them better investigators, better researchers.
Yes, absolutely, a better human as well. It puts us back in touch with what we've lost.
Right.
And I also found, this you may find interesting, Eric, in that there are certain food types that we can consume that will enhance that experience that you're talking about, or interest. And carbs, high carbs, potatoes, white bread, rice, pasta, that can hinder it. And where on the other side, if you've got food types that is producing melatonin and things like that can actually enhance the experience. The disastrous side that I found out in my research was that for us to detect and enhance that experience, we're absorbing information through our skin, which is being then filtered through the subconscious into the conscious brain. And that experience can be affected severely. I might add, severely affected when we consume, either drink or eat, a food type or drink with a high content of sugar, refined sugar, the white stuff. Because that shuts down the body's fight or flight. What you're actually doing is shutting down the body's capability of detecting the true nature, and this is the big thing, the true nature of the entity that approaches you, because that entity can show itself in the most innocent of children, but harbor the darkest of thoughts. And whenever we consume a soda drink or something like that, that shuts the body's capability down of filtering away that mask to see or sense what lies behind that.
Right.
Now, in effect, we're shutting ourselves down, and that is a serious situation to be in. And by understanding what we're eating and drinking can seriously affect the outcome of an investigation, and also into ourselves.
Yeah, and that goes directly against what a lot of people see. Oh, well, we're going out on an investigation. I got to go get like 12 monsters, and
there you go.
I mean,
yep.
Black coffee is one thing.
Uh-huh.
You'll have the caffeine, but you don't have you have control over the amount of
That's
sweetener
right.
and sugar with that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, people. I think personally, I think that's going to be the next big leap will be made, is when we start kind of investigating the investigator, because that's how the connection is going to be made. I don't think it's going to be a piece of equipment.
And that's something that I teach in my lectures, the blind perceptions lectures. I get into all of that about what we're experiencing, how we experience it, what our bodies is doing, and how both the spirit can interfere with that, and also how we can interfere with it. So I deal with all of that.
Yeah, and people need to learn. I think people need to learn to trust themselves too. I think that's another rather serious issue that we run into in the field, is that people don't. They get a feeling, or how can I say this? They get a feeling in their gut, and they don't trust it.
Uh-huh.
They're almost repelled. They almost do the exact opposite of what their intuition would tell them to do.
Well, for a good while there, I often heard the words being thrown about. It has to be a scientific investigation. Scientific. This word kept being thrown around. And if the truth be told, it can't be any more scientific than an ice cream sitting on a wall, because we can't produce repetitive scenarios within a lab of a paranormal nature. It doesn't happen. It will never happen. So it was very, very difficult. So to use the term scientific was the wrong term.
Right.
What we were doing was we were having a technical investigation into the area of the paranormal, because it simply wasn't scientific. There was no way we could even get close to that.
Yeah, and people need to remember that there are several things that scientists do that you really need to get in the habit of doing. Document your environment,
Uh-huh.
and that means actually writing it down. It's great to have it on.
The thing is about that as well. If we walk into an environment, we immediately change the electromagnetic signature of that environment.
Correct.
So even though we take a baseline, that baseline is going to change. So it's a very, very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But keeping notes and noting as much as you can, of course, is good, because whenever you go back to follow into your notes, that's grand.
Yeah. Well, and then that's something we've tried to kind of preach on this end over here on our network, is because I can't tell you how many times you'll be in a conversation with somebody and they'll have a great piece of data, let's say an EVP that they may have recorded somewhere. And the first question that any skeptic will ask is, okay, who else was in the room? Okay,
Uh-huh.
Maybe they can answer that question. Where were they located in the room? They probably can't answer that question.
Uh-huh.
If it happened 6 months ago. Whereas if you go to do an EVP session and all you have to jot down is northwest corner Bob, north southeast corner Sue, and just document where everybody was at in the room. Well, then all you have to do is go back. Well, at that particular time, because that's where a lot of people kind of get thrown to the wolves. They may have a very good piece of data, but if you can't say where or exactly how you recorded it, that's people lose.
Again, it comes back onto the question, Eric, why are we doing it? Are we doing it for the skeptic, or are we doing it for ourselves? Right. And I certainly don't work for a skeptic, because it's really very difficult, and I have enough to do without having to deal with skeptics. But I can see a huge change in perceptions and the way that research is starting to happen on a global scale. I can definitely see it from the last 6-7 months. There's been a change coming, and I can definitely see that being reflected. And it's good to hear from your perspective the way that you're you're addressing your investigations and the way that and where you're heading with your investigations. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely trying over here on this, and you can take some responsibility for that.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to hear that. But keep up the good work, and see where we can end up with this.
Yeah, that's where we're hoping to take it. You also have a book that just came out.
Yes, In the Mist of Gods. And that took me out of my comfort zone, away from the ghostly aspect, and into a bigger realm of research, which included cryptozoology, ufology, as well as the world of the paranormal and supernatural. An amazing experience, I have to say, that took me to the underworld of both the Mayans and the Celts and everything else, and literally actually did take me underground. And there were times that it was potentially dangerous. So it was such an experience. The work has continued on from there since that book. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to start onto the follow-up to that, because I've started the writing the new book, which is documenting the interaction and the modern sense of the Irish banshee, and what she's doing at the moment, and how people are perceiving that and interacting with that Celtic messenger of death.
Well, isn't that it? Doesn't almost every either Aboriginal culture, or when you start getting into the kind of, I don't want to say the Germanic tribes, but you know what I mean, when we actually lost melatonin and migrated north, however you would like to describe that, with the Germanic tribes, hasn't every major culture, always had something similar to the banshee?
Yes, the Native Americans, they've got the owl, of course, and you move across into the Slavic countries, and up into Norway and Sweden, Finland. You've got the what do they call now, the Valkyries. Ireland has got the banshee, and Scotland has got their own version of it as well. So yeah, there's always something there. But in a modern sense, we think, oh, what a load of nonsense! Right. This is all just make believe. But those people are the ones who hide behind double glazed windows and drive to work. In fact, drive to the shop. They don't walk anymore. We have no longer any more interaction with the countryside. Even if we do manage to go for a walk within the forest, we stick on earbuds and listen to music. Again, we rob ourselves of that connection. So these things still do happen, and they're, from my experience and from the interviews that I've done, these are happening even in our cities. The places that we thought were sanctified. No, these things still stray into the cities, and they will deliver that message.
Right. Well, I mean, that's because they're not attached to the concrete or the structures that are there. They're attached to the land.
That's right. And there was the old saying back in Ireland, "Oh, the electric light killed the fairy." Far from it. Those are very much alive.
I would have to concur, and that can also send us down a wormhole talking about things like ley lines, how geological formations aid or help moving water. Yeah. Yep.
It's just absolutely amazing, how much stuff is actually around us, and we don't even take the time. In fact, even in we were just talking about this last night, that in modern schools, a lot of the history, from an Irish perspective, from an American perspective, and a global perspective, there are things that we're not being told or taught anymore, which I find is an awful shame. Parts of our history which are being ignored, for the more, I suppose, clean, streamlined versions of what we're allowed to perceive and percept, which is handed down by, of course, high-end media and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's politically correct to not talk about certain parts of our history. Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the same thing over here in the States. The biggest problem we run into is our our foundation of our education system over here is based on memorization. It's not based on free thought.
Yeah.
That's why when people get involved, at least over to my experience here in the States, the people that get involved over here, it's a learning curve to almost make them think for themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
They can.
We've become a world of sheeples.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to be able to rise above the wool, so to speak.
Yeah, and if you do, you're usually shot.
Yeah, right. It's amazing how well the sheep can make firearms. I will give them that. You know, that's something else I was going to discuss with you right here, because I know we're starting to wind down. How important is critical thinking to what we do, and what's your opinion of that?
That's exceptionally important, I find. You know, we need the time to absorb what we've done, what we've saw, what we experienced. But having, of course, you know, from a standpoint of critical thinking, we need to have that as well. I think really what it comes down to is finding balance, and that is exceptionally important. If we find the balance, then everything else will fall into place. But sometimes we can find, even within the world of the paranormal, there'll be some people that shouldn't be investigating the world of the paranormal because they haven't got a good grounding.
True.
And that doesn't lead to good critical thinking or understanding or even meditative reflection, because they just simply can't do it. And before you know it, they're gone with the wind, and as we call it here in Ireland, they're gone with the fairies, because they didn't have that grounding in place.
Right. And if you have to, once again, you know, this goes back to why, like you said, why are you doing this? You know, people have to have a motivation. There has to be a reason you're doing this. I mean, if you would just as soon rather be sitting in front of your television, then please stay in front of your television. Because there's other people that are attempting to actually do something, and you can get in the way of that.
Yeah. And you know, we have a field as well, which of course seems to attract egos, huge egos,
oh, Lord,
which can be destructive in itself as well. Not only to the person, the individual, but also to the group.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, Kim and I, with our group, we haven't posted a lot of. We've only done, I think, 2 episodes of data review, in the last 4 years that we've been involved in the internet broadcasting. I think we've only actually done 2 episodes where we've actually shown some of the data we've collected. We don't put a lot of it out there because, much like what you just said, I'm not out there doing it for anybody else.
Yeah. That's right.
You know, and people have to be thick-skinned that way, and some people have trouble being thick-skinned.
They do. No, you know, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a comment, you know, on something. But sometimes we find today, in today's age of digital technology, that you know, this protocol and etiquette is thrown out the window. You know, people are attacked on Facebook for having an opinion, and quite viciously attacked, I might add. I think, you know, that those people who are attacking wouldn't do that on a face to face, because there's still that thing there that you just simply wouldn't do that.
Yeah, they might get punched in the eye.
I hope that they wouldn't do that.
Yeah, they might get punched in the eye, whereas when they're behind that keyboard, they got all the courage in the world.
They could get a Belfast welcome.
But you know, that's the thing, is a lot of people, it's one thing to have somebody post a picture, and it's another thing to have somebody, because you can see it there too, is you'll have 12 people that say, you know, that's just crap, that's garbage, why are you doing this, what's your motivation, you suck, blah blah blah. But there's usually 1 or 2 people that'll pop on there and go, okay, I can see what I think you see in this, but this happened because, and they'll explain the phenomena that they recorded, which to the coddles of my cold furry heart brings, you know, warms it slightly to know that there are people out there that are still willing to try to help and bring everybody with us as we go, instead of this kind of lone wolf solo mentality that a lot of groups have.
Yeah,
You know, we got to work together, folks. That's the only way it's going to work.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, Barry, I know you're busy. I know you've got to jet. I want to thank you so much for being with us tonight.
It's been a pleasure, Eric, and looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, and we will definitely get with rescheduling you and getting you on again, maybe in another couple of months, and we'll continue that whole little wormhole discussion about Schumann resonance and everything else.
Good man, good man. In the meantime, I know I'll be over in California, and on the 15th of March is my first lecture over there, and then nice. I'll be holding the ghost hunt in Allensworth on the 16th. So that's going to be a great weekend for me. Yeah.
So everybody, and be sure and be careful, Barry. The weather is subject to be like 75 and sunny. Be careful out there.
Oh, I'm going to love
it. Okay. Well, thank you, sir, so much for being with us, and everybody else. We'll see you later. It's refreshing for us, those of us out there that are not hunters but more researchers. It means a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
that's great to know.
I was very curious. You've done some work with infrasound. Is that correct? Have you ever had any results with any of that?
Not necessarily. There were a few initial hits that we were getting with infrasound, but not a great deal. I know that some folks out there will say that infrasound causes all these strange feelings and all the rest, but it actually affects a small amount of the population. So that's something to take into consideration. And at different frequencies and decibels, of course, the infrasound will do all manner of different things. You know, you will have...
Please get involved as soon as you can. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a grand load of fun. Okay, tonight, I'm talking with a very good friend of mine that we've never met in person, talked to several times, but never met in person. Tonight on Yakking with the Yeti, we have Mr. Barry Fitzgerald. Barry, are you out there?
Yes, Eric. How are you?
Oh, I'm surviving right now.
Good man. Good man.
I do have some questions. I was around. I've been around several different times when you've been interviewed, and I've always been fascinated by the technical side of what you do. Of all of the people on television that I have seen, you, sir, are one of the few that actually brings something to the table with that. And I have to thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
You know, I know a lot of the shows get a bad rap, but there's a few of you guys out there that are bringing something to the table. welcome everybody to Yakking with the Yeti. I am the Yeti. How are you all doing today? Don't forget, like you saw in the commercials, Lower Catskills Paracon is coming up May 3rd and 4th. Please order your tickets. Things are selling out. We're also running out of vendor tables. So